Starting out, do you believe that ageism is a form of bigotry?
Yes.
You do? Yeah, I thought so because you wrote an article saying that ageism in media discourse about Biden's reelection is an issue. Do you still believe that ageism was an issue in the past election cycle?
I believe that ageism in any form and in any context is a problem.
Do you believe that Americans who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were bigoted?
I did not say that in my article, nor do I claim that now.
You said that ageism is a form of bigotry.
Ageism is a form of bigotry, but I did not say that in my article. You cannot misrepresent my ideas.
Okay, well, why don't you provide your explanation for that? Ageism is a form of bigotry. People who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were ageist. How do you square that?
I'm less concerned about Joe Biden's age. I am more concerned about young people and older Americans being systematically denied opportunities and access because of their age.
Do you think that
what you just saw is another example of why these hearings matter and why voices like Representative Brandon Gill continue to cut through the noise? This exchange gets right to the heart of debates that affect every American: fairness, standards, merit, accountability, and the refusal to let academic jargon or evasive language obscure simple truths. When someone is testifying before Congress, clear answers aren't optional. They're expected. And what Representative Gill did here was insist on clarity where the witness repeatedly tried to sidestep it. In this video, you're going to see a direct, no-nonsense confrontation over ageism, race-based decision-making, and the broader question of whether institutions should operate on equal standards or demographic engineering. And regardless of your politics, there's real value in lawmakers demanding straight answers on these issues. If you care about transparency, fairness, and honest debate, hit the like button, subscribe to America's Civic Lens, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. Now,
thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of the witnesses for taking the time to be here. We certainly really appreciate it. Dr. Harper, I've got a couple questions for you. Just starting out, do you believe that ageism is a form of bigotry?
Yes.
You do? Yeah, I thought so because you wrote an article saying that ageism in media discourse about Biden's reelection is an issue. Do you still believe that ageism was an issue in the past election cycle?
I believe that ageism in any form and in any context is a problem.
Do you believe that Americans who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were bigoted?
I did not say that in my article, nor do I claim that now.
You said that ageism is a form of bigotry.
Ageism is a form of bigotry, but I did not say that in my article. You cannot misrepresent my ideas.
Okay, well, why don't you provide your explanation for that? Ageism is a form of bigotry. People who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were ageist. How do you square that?
I'm less concerned about Joe Biden's age. I am more concerned about young people and older Americans being systematically denied opportunities and access because of their age.
Do you think that Joe Biden's age had a relation to his cognitive decline?
That is outside of my area of expertise.
Do you need to be an expert to determine whether an 82-year-old man who is clearly visibly declining mentally on camera, if that has anything to do with his age?
I'm not a cognitive scientist.
You're not? Okay. Of course you're not. Do you think those Americans were right to be concerned about Joe Biden's age?
Again, you're missing the point. The point is about the ageism itself. Okay. It isn't about Joe Biden.
We're going to move on. Do you believe that America should be a colorblind society? For instance, should people be treated differently based on their race? It's just a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no question.
It's a yes or no question.
It is as I said in the beginning of my testimony, America
yes or
has
no
not done right by indigenous peoples, by black people, by Asian American and Pacific Islander people.
Should people be treated differently based on their race? Yes or no?
People should receive the services and the support and the remedies that are owed to them.
That they should be treated differently based on their race.
They should receive the remedies that are owed to them because of the systemic racism and injustice.
Do you believe that race should be considered in employer hiring practices?
I do not believe that white people are the only qualified people for jobs.
I didn't say that. Nobody said that. I asked you if race should be considered in employer hiring practices. And you're not going to intimidate me by slandering me as a racist.
You're also, I did not call you a racist.
No,
You're not going to
implied
intimidate me by insisting that I called you a racist.
Straightforward question. It's a yes or no question. Should race be considered in employer hiring practices? Yes or no?
I believe that diversity ought to be considered as companies and other organizations attempt to reflect their customers, our country.
I'll take that as a yes. Which race do you think should be preferred?
I do not think that a single race should be preferred.
Well, you just said that you believe that race should be considered in employer hiring practices.
I don't know. There's going to be a transcript of this hearing. I didn't say that in that way.
Okay, why don't you explain what you believe?
What I said
briefly.
and what I believe is that the demographic composition of workplaces,
Which
our
is,
nation's military, and so on, our Congress ought to reflect the diversity of the United States of America.
Racial demographic composition. Racial demographic, is that what you're saying?
Racial, gender.
Okay, so race should be a factor in employer hiring practices. Yeah, that's what you're saying, is it not?
Organizations ought to attempt to match the diversity of
you're
their...
hopping around the question.
No,
you don't want to
I am
answer
answering
it.
quite straightforwardly, as a matter of fact.
Who gets to determine which races are preferred?
I already told you I don't have a single racial group.
You just told me that you believe that the racial demographic makeup should be taken into account in hiring practices.
And it should be reflected in all levels of companies and other organizations.
Okay, let's talk about college admissions. If two different children are applying for college, let's say one is white and one is black, and there's one slot available, should they be evaluated based on the same objective criteria? Test scores, for instance.
Are you familiar with holistic admissions?
Should they be held to the same standards regarding test scores?
I am a proponent of holistic admissions.
It's just a yes or no question.
Yeah, no, I can't answer that question for you as a proponent of holistic admissions.
Got it. I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Down. Now let's get into the full reaction. Watching the full exchange, a few things stand out immediately. Representative Brandon Gill approaches his hearing with a disciplined, prosecutorial style. Ask a direct question, seek a direct answer, and expose any evasiveness by simply restating the question. This method is effective because it reveals, not interprets. He doesn't need to editorialize. The witness's reluctance to give straightforward answer speaks for itself. The conversation begins with ageism. The witness firmly asserts that ageism is bigotry, and yet simultaneously attempts to carve out exceptions when the questioning turns to Biden's age and public concerns over cognitive decline. Representative Gill seizes on that inconsistency. If the standard is that age-based concern is bigotry, then the witness should be willing to apply that consistently. Instead, we get deflection. Suddenly the question becomes out of my expertise, or missing the point. Gill isn't having it. He highlights a selective application of principles, which is central to the entire debate. But the more consequential part of this hearing comes when the conversation shifts to race and whether America should strive to be colorblind. Representative Gill's line of questioning is simple. Should people be treated differently based on race? Should race be considered in hiring? Should two applicants be judged by the same standards? These are foundational questions, the kind that determine the moral architecture of our institutions. What we see is a witness repeatedly refusing to answer yes or no, instead pivoting to phrases like remedies owed or holistic approaches. Representative Gill pushes back, and what emerges is a revealing admission. The witness believes that institutions should take race into account to ensure that demographic composition mirrors national demographics. That is, by definition, race-conscious preferential outcomes. Gill's strength here is in refusing to let the witness hide behind abstract framing. By asking which race should be preferred, he exposes the practical implications of the ideology being defended. The same pattern appears in the college admissions discussion. Representative Gill asks whether two students, one white and one black, should be judged by the same test score criteria. Instead of an answer, we get an endorsement of holistic admissions. And again, Gill's approach is to make the lack of a clear standard visible. If you can't say yes to equal criteria, then you are implicitly endorsing unequal criteria. That's the point he draws out. What stands out most in Gill's performance is his consistency. He asks value-neutral, principle-based questions. The witness responds with conditional, ideology-based framing. The gap between those two approaches becomes a story. And in hearings like this, demonstrating the gap is half the battle. This is precisely why this moment matters. If institutions are going to base decisions on race, age, or identity categories, Americans deserve clarity. They deserve to know what those policies really entail. Representative Brandon Gill's questioning forces that clarity into the open, and that's why exchanges like this resonate. If you found this breakdown helpful, support America's Civic Lens by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who follows congressional oversight. More reactions and policy analysis coming soon.